Welcome to another episode of Bourbon and Rum. This is a podcast of two brothers from opposite ends of the spectrum. My name's Kent. I'm a rum drinker, and I'm from the left side of the aisle.
And I'm Kyle. I like bourbon, tend to be a little more conservative. Join us as we explore this experiment. Can two brothers from different sides of the political spectrum have a civil conversation and celebrate our differences?
What are you drinking?
Man, I cracked a bottle over the holidays. It says 13th Colony Double Oaked, and it was like a $300 bottle. You know, I was talking to the crazy neighbor, and he's got a lot of good stuff on his shelf. And we were like, just because we paid good money for it doesn't mean you don't crack it. Like, you're going to have to drink all this stuff eventually. I might as well drink it while I'm healthy and alive. So I cracked this baby, and this stuff is, again, another reason you got to get down here, Kent. I got a lineup of bourbons you got to try, but this stuff is really interesting. I mean, I don't know if you can see how dark it is. I mean, it is like pitch black, and it's 134 proof. So it is really hot, but it is really good stuff.
Is it as flavorful as that dark color would suggest?
Yeah, it's almost like it almost tastes like a chocolate covered cherry or something, like a cherry wood almost. It's really really good flavor.
Sounds good. Well, I'm drinking a local rum. There's actually, we went to a party at it. There's a distillery up about halfway between us and the airport, and really nice place. They've got like a big lawn thing, like a big outdoor summer thing. Of course, this was we were just indoors, but kind of their claim to fame was a bourbon, but they make multiple bourbon expressions, a rye, brandies, and then they also have vintage there, and so this is Cedar Ridge Distillery, and I bought a bottle of their rum last night, and it's pretty good.
That's great.
Light, very.
It's aged in a barrel.
And honestly, that's part of the thing with rum. Like, whereas true bourbon's supposed to be made in Kentucky, there's a lot of kind of domain protection schemes out there but rum is and has always been made wherever it is. Wherever you got the stuff, you make the rum. And so kind of cool to have it just made up the road. Well, how you doing? We're a week into the administration. I led on through our pre-show conversation that, unsurprisingly, I've been a little upset by some things that have happened. But you raised a good point. This can't be, it could be, and it might be fun for me that we have 208 episodes of me bitching about Trump, but, we could probably do something a little more constructive than that. I am kind of in a foul humor, and I guess I'm interested in your take on this. This isn't Trump per se. I don't think that he's any different than I would have expected. I guess, and I told you offline too, that it was a particular Facebook post that set me off. And admittedly, I probably ought to have, a little more protection around the trigger than that a single Facebook post can light me. But it was a really obnoxious, I don't remember the way it was worded, but about the plane full of migrants being deported. And the way that he described it used, I won't say a racial epithet, but absolutely kind of dehumanizing language and like good riddance and yada, yada. And, it just struck me that the case that's been made is that border's out of control. We have to control the border. We have to do that. And that there's a business case for this, that it's not racism, that we just want secure borders, we want to be safe from crime and so forth and things like that. But I got to tell you, when people approach this with the kind of glee that they do, it really undercuts the message that this isn't racist. It just strikes me the way that people are talking about it. And I don't mean to paint everybody with that brush, but it just really bugged me. It's like, okay, Trump administration has every right to enforce the law on the border, to deport people that are here illegally. That's not the issue. But I don't think calling people names on the way out the door, I just don't think it's constructive. And it makes me question people that say that it's really about security and not about racism.
Well, and was the guy cheering when Obama deported 3 million immigrants? He probably wasn't, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, we could have
It's kind
another.
of what we've said all along. I don't mean to cut you off, but that I keep talking about tone, and I don't mean to make it about that. Like, outcomes and what happens are important, and so I don't want to spin that. But I want to believe that this is all on the up and up, and yet people seem to find a way to lead me to think that, I don't know, if you're a racist against Latin American immigrants, you're probably comfortable right now. That's all I'm saying.
Well, but yeah, I mean, this guy sounds like an asshole is the biggest problem.
True.
But again, Trump's not the first guy to deport people.
No.
By any means. And I was thinking about this too. One of my arguments against the previous administration's policy is I think, there's a tendency to be like, well, it's mean to close the border. It's mean to deport people. It's not being welcoming. It's being what's the word I'm looking for? That that it's somehow more humane to just let people come across the border. When I don't think that's the case. I feel like honestly, it's more disastrous for people's lives to have the promise of an empty, of an open border they can come across because they're going to risk their life to do it. So, I think there's an argument that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Kyle. And I think that that it is valid to say that if these stunts, like the 80 people they put on an airplane and flew to Mexico, and Mexico turned them around and they flew back to the U.S., and they spent $800,000 on the flight. But if that kind of the noise about it and the news makes people say, look, it's not a good time. We're not going to try to sneak across the border because it's just too hot and it's not a good time. Like, if that's the outcome, that's a fine outcome. I'm not saying that it's immoral or unethical to enforce the border laws, to deport people that are here illegally. I don't think any of that
no, you don't.
inherently
Well,
is bad.
it's the whole thing of, we talked a little bit about it. Like, I like some of the things he's doing. I voted for him. I voted for many of the things on his platform. But at the same time, I don't put my faith in the man. You put your faith in and the other piece of it is the slam dunking that occurs. Oh, my guy won. So, whatever, pal, because, it could have been the other way around. And, you could have been slam dunking on somebody else. And again, I hope anyways, you don't get the impression when we have our conversations that I'm like, this guy is the second coming and I'm all in on everything he does. I'm not. I mean, I don't necessarily like everything he does, but that's why I think, like you said, it's, this guy just sounds like he was being a jackass, and there are people that are jackasses.
He was. And, I don't think he's the only. I guess I want to make it clear that this is not a Trump rag per se. I guess it's element of it, but kind of at people that, unquestioningly, and I think you described it perfectly. People think that, like, how is the country better off if you're like flexing, like, ooh, we really stuck it to the libs, ooh, those Mexicans are on this plane out of here. Like, these are serious issues. Come on, let's not act like we're in high school. Maybe I'm just hurt because I lost, but it's again, form, attitude, tone. I say that every time, and then I feel like, well, that sounds kind of like, that sounds stupid, because it, like, really what matters is what the outcome is. But it just bugs me.
It sounds like you got a Facebook editing problem, Kent. There's
I do a little bit.
There's buttons on Facebook that could really control that a lot.
Yeah, I do. No, I get it. I think, the other one that really had me depressed and frustrated this week was Trump taking the time to call out in his speech his position on gender and that there's only two and that's that. And like, you're welcome to believe that, but there are a number of people in this country who do identify as trans. And to kind of just say you don't exist, again, I think these are serious issues. I'm going to be the first to say that there are some things around trans issues that I'm not comfortable with. I don't love the idea of trans athletes competing in sports of the other gender. Yeah, I don't. Actually, I think that's interesting because it has a lot of Title IX implications.
Yeah,
right?
that's the crazy thing, right?
I'm personally opposed to non-reversible interventions for minors. Like I'm not for gender reassignment surgery for people below 18. And I know that would put me at odds with a lot of things. So I don't want to act like I'm just like everything. But wow, these are serious issues. And even if you don't agree with something, it deserves seriousness rather than flippant dismissal of people. We talked before, and I thought it was a good conversation. I talked about my coworker who's gay and was worried about the status of his marriage. And I think at the time you were kind of like, well, what? Like it seemed crazy that I would even raise that. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but I've got an employee in my team who's a trans man, and basically he was told on Monday that there's not a place for you. I don't mean to devolve this to that kind of thing, but those are the kind of things that really bother.
Yeah, I think the whole gender element has been certainly a huge issue of the last few years, and I mean you have good points there about your positions, and certainly if I had a kid that had that issue going on, I could certainly see where there's sensitivity around that.
I just think it's a serious issue and ought to be treated seriously rather than kind of off the cuff.
Well, I don't know if he's is there an executive order that can make that proclamation? I mean,
yeah, I read a little bit about it. They're doing some things like, I don't know how it's going to play out, but a number of federal forms and things like that allow you to check a non-binary box or something like that, and they're undoing all of that.
well, but then you got to wonder too, though. Like, I guess what I mean, can an executive order do that? Like, there's a difference. There's always going to be, and that's the hard part about controlling that. It's like, okay, well then, where do you draw that line? Like, you have these people that will say, well, there's 50 different genders. Well, how do you manage that? I mean, I agree, it is a serious issue. Honestly, I was reading something the other day, if it was an article or it was some kind of an official thing, and they were talking about, well, people with a penis, and I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Like, I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
I get I think if I had to put words in your mouth, I think your thing is like, it shouldn't be deduced to some type of sophomoric behavior. But I think the flip side is it gets to be like an infinite level of possibilities too. It's like, there's probably some pragmatism somewhere in the middle of there.
I think that's entirely true. I think in similar way, I don't want to go I think you responded how I kind of hoped you would respond, like wherever you're at on this. It's a serious issue. It's not something for jokes about that person. I guess that's what I'm saying.
It's not something, I guess there's an element the government control, but there's an element the government can't control. The way the way I interpret a lot of these gender things, it's like a belief structure. It's not necessarily a fact that, like either somebody's got a penis or they don't have a penis. I mean, that is a somewhat objective thing. But if somebody feels a certain way, like you're not going to mandate whatever anybody. I mean, people can feel whatever they want to feel.
Right. I guess, it's one of those. We're not going to fix it, but it's kind of like, wow, of all of the stuff that we got to tackle now, it just doesn't seem.
Well,
I just don't see the.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily advocating to say it one way or the other, but it was a huge part of the platform for sure. all of the issues around that and how you treat those. Like I said, like you said, I mean, there's probably more elaborate ways to treat some of those issues, but it is certainly an element.
Yeah. I don't see, you're right, it was part of the platform, and that is disturbing to me because, again, I'm like, okay, if we've got millions of illegal immigrants in the country and they're taking landscaping jobs away from good red-blooded Americans, and that's why we got to deport them. Okay, I mean, there's at least there's some kind of, but
I don't think I think the problem's a little bigger than a few landscaping jobs, but okay.
Well, I'm just saying, if we think it, I mean, we talked about that a lot. I think millions of people working and paying into Social Security who won't collect it has probably been a good thing for Social Security. So there's different ways to look at it, but there's at least ostensibly a economic crime prevention and social policy element to obviously border enforcement and reducing the number of illegal immigrants in the country. It's hard for me to see the economic harm of trans people's positions. I hear you that sometimes, if everybody gets to pick the nth expression of that can be kind of difficult to keep up with and maybe excessive, but I just don't know. Of all of the things that we had to fix, of all of the things that were top of the issue to worry about, that it puzzles me that needed to be so hit so directly, and it disturbs me that talking about it in a flippant way, I just don't think advances the issue.
Understand where you're coming from.
Other than that, I think things are pretty.
Pardons? You didn't bring up the pardons. I figured that was going to come up.
Well, I'm interested in what you think about the pardons. I mean, was that a good idea?
Well, I don't know. I've thought a lot about it, honestly, because I figured that was going to be top of your mind. I wasn't expecting the gender question or the other one that you had, but I mean, I don't know. I would have. I think I would have played that differently. I told you I watched that movie. I mean, that really pissed me off. And I'm like, these freaking assholes, they don't deserve to get off. Now, that said, I do think, I researched and read several of them. I do think, I think some of them were like overboard on charging, again,
sure.
And we can differ the degree of the riot and everything, but I don't think, I mean, you could say some of these people were going to try to overthrow the government, but hey, you showed up unarmed with a Viking hat. I'm not too worried about you overthrowing the government. You're a thug and you broke into a building, you ought to be punished for it, and so.
Yeah. Probation and fines for a lot of the people probably made more sense. Overcharging was, I think, probably true.
And I think you could have addressed that through the pardoning process without such a blanket. That said, I did find it, I probably overread this because, again, I expected this to be a big topic. But it was funny. One of the articles I read, I found really fascinating. It was in Newsweek of all things, which isn't exactly, I mean, that's not exactly like the National Review, right? I mean, Newsweek is typically a little more center or left of center. But there's an editorial in Newsweek, and it was like, no, Biden's pardons were worse than Trump's pardon. And the logic was, yeah, Trump pardoned all these guys, but he told everybody he was going to pardon them. And then on day, he did it in the open. He did it in front of news media and did it, a couple hours in his administration. Their point was with Biden, it was like, he didn't, he told everybody he wasn't going to do that, or it wasn't for blanket pardons, and he gave them blanket pardons. He did in the last 15 minutes. I'll tell you what my position is. I would have played it differently, but I had this conversation with somebody the other day, and they're like, they shouldn't be allowed to do it. I said, you know what? I don't have a problem with either one of them, because I do mean this. I do think you need an absolute power of a pardon for a president. I think that is a sensible thing. A lot of people are going to criticize Biden for his family or the 8,000 people he did. People are going to criticize Trump, but really, one, I think it's a constitutional power that ought to be there, and and it shouldn't be threatened. Because, and honestly, I mean, most people getting pardons aren't somebody who everybody wishes would get a pardon. You know what I mean? People tend to be pissed when people get pardoned because it's somebody that committed a crime, right, and they're forgiving them of the crime. So it's kind of by nature going to piss people off. But it also has it's not without ramifications. I mean, Trump's not running again for office, but that certainly that is a flavor of his presidency and could help or hurt his people's view of him. Similar with Biden. I mean, Biden was going out the door, and he's got to live with that. That's going to be on his presidency, and people are going to talk about it. And
I actually think very seldom has, in the past anyway, have pardons been a bad thing. And I actually agree with you. I think it was not crazy to pardon probably 80% of the J6. I won't say hostages. I'll maybe say terrorists or traitors. It was probably 80% that that was appropriate. And I think that there was an element of overcharging going on. And I'm willing personally to live with the rest of the ones that I think were egregious and don't think they deserved a pardon. But to your point, that's why pardons exist, because I wasn't going to let them off.
right,
And I think you know, Gerald Ford took a big hit for pardoning Nixon. It was 100% the right thing to do. 100% the right thing to do.
yeah,
And what I hope is that these dueling volleys of arguably reckless pardons from both sides here might be exactly what we need to turn the dial back on aggressive and politically motivated prosecution, which has not been good for us.
well, and
The reason we got Donald Trump as a president is because a bunch of people charged him with a bunch of stuff in multiple. I don't think he would have run if he didn't have to do it to avoid going to prison.
well, I mean, I think the fool's errand is the arguing like these pardons weren't as bad as these pardons. Like, you're pardoning criminals. I mean, are you going to start stacking up? Well, this guy did this, and this guy, like, I don't know. I mean,
No, I hope it turns down the temperature of the whole thing. We would not have been well served by some kind of show trial of Anthony Fauci. I don't think the
yeah,
country's better off for that. So no, I hate to disappoint you. You came loaded for bear on the pardons, but
man,
I think I
bummer.
agree with you.
Oh, the
One last that I'll pick on. I was pleased to see the judiciary of this country is aware that there's a 14th Amendment to the Constitution, and the arbitrary ending of birthright citizenship is going to have to wait for a day in court.
yeah, and I assume that's why. I mean, that was a way to tee it up, I guess, an expeditious way to tee it up.
Whatever. It was the moral equivalent in my mind of saying we're going to end the freedom of speech. The reason the pardons I'm for is because it's written in the Constitution. The president gets to do that. It's an absolute right. Nobody gets to decide against. Kind of like the freedom of speech, kind of like birthright citizenship since the 14th Amendment.
Yeah, I don't know that I got a huge opinion on it either way, but it does. I don't know. It is exacerbated when the number of folks come in, and it's kind of like an anchor there. I don't know. I was talking to somebody from the UK this week. We were talking about immigration, and I didn't realize this, but they said illegal immigration is a huge issue in the UK.
Hmm.
They said like 2.5 million people have come illegally, and it's kind of like the UK rules, and somebody could fact check me. I may be butchering them, but it's basically like, I mean, it's not birthright citizenship, but it's basically like if you show up on the soil, you get the full rights and benefits of being a citizen. So all you got to do is plant your feet on the soil and you're there. Like they can't get rid of you. They got to provide housing for you and shelter and everything else.
Wow.
But so what's happening is you get these ships full of people coming across the Mediterranean or, up through the sea and landing on the soil. So.
Right. Well, again, insofar as that it's an enticement to people to come here illegally, probably so. And but again, there's probably people that want to move to the United States because we have freedom of speech, and you don't just piss away your values because you're afraid somebody else would be interested in sharing in that. There's other ways to handle that.
That is the benefit of the Constitution. I mean, if somebody's got an issue with anything, one branch does, there's a lawsuit and it's going to go to court.
Yeah. And if people really, they're that butthurt about birthright citizenship, spark up the repeal of the 14th Amendment. There's a mechanism.
Yeah. Well, there's some congressman made a proposed amendment to allow a third term. Did you see that, Kent?
No, I didn't. I didn't.
But
And again,
the
that's great. We're going to need
well, but the you will get the stipulation is you can get a third term, but not if you've served two terms consecutively.
and you use spray tan.
it's
If you got
very specific.
the non-consecutive, the Grover Cleveland Donald Trump rule, but you also have to be a spray tan user, and I don't think Grover Cleveland was. So yeah, but it would it would be useful 4 years from now if we could get such an amendment passed.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm sure we can get. Well, you just need 38 states. So how hard is that?
38 states. Actually, the scary thing about that is that we've probably got, probably not quite 38, but you can, yeah, I'll keep my opinion to myself on that. I'm willing to bet that the mere pain in the ass of doing it would be somewhat protective of the country in that case.
Well, what do you think? No, what do you think about? I figured you'd had an opinion on Trump's line about Gaza here over the weekend. He said we should just go clean the place out and ship people off to Egypt and Jordan while they get the place fixed back up again.
Yeah, I mean, interesting idea. How does that work as far as immigration in Lebanon and Jordan? Like
Egypt and Jordan, yeah.
Egypt
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Jordan, sorry. Yeah.
What do you think is, I mean, you've spent time over there, and I know you have a lot of opinions about that. Everybody talks about the two-state solution, and it's like, you hear it till you're blue in the face, but it doesn't really seem logical that you could make a two-state solution. I mean, in theory, but I mean, like, they've never been able to get both, like, the Palestinians have never been okay with it because they're always like, well, there should only be one state. So it's like,
Right, right. I mean, that's a big issue with it. The other thing is that you've got, and my two trips to the Middle East hardly count as spending time over there, but I do have opinions about it. I think that the issue, one of the biggest issues, is that the Palestinian people are not a homogenous body who all think alike.
yeah,
And what life is like, what the worldview is like, what the experience is like, and what the hopes and dreams and possibilities are like for someone who lives in Gaza City is very different from someone who lives in the West Bank. And that's part of why you've seen a break between, and I'll get the names of the groups wrong. I mean, there's Hamas, and is the PLO still, or is it I don't know what they're called, the Palestinian Authority. So you've got a big political schism among the Palestinian people, which makes a two-state solution hard. If you got half of the two states, the people don't agree, like you're setting
right.
yourself up for trouble there. Um, I don't know. I think that I'm probably going to give a really unpopular opinion. I think that the Palestinian people got one of the great shaft jobs of an ethnicity that's happened in the last 100 years, and that's saying something because there's been a lot of that in the last 100 years. But they got a really raw deal, and that said, that raw deal happened 90 some years ago, you know,
Yeah, right.
85 years ago, and you know, at some point you got to figure out how to live in the world as it is, not as you wish it were 80 years ago. Which is not to say I have like some kind of peace plan in mind, but I don't know. Is a two-state solution going to work? I think there again, it's kind of, I'm back to one of my tone arguments, but the Israelis can talk about, well, we've got to have security and we got to protect our country all the time. But to make sure there's no chance that anybody's ever going to ram a two-state solution down our throat, we're going to build retirement communities for Israelis in the West Bank right next to Palestinian settlements or Palestinian villages, just so that it's a hell of a lot harder to unravel this problem if we ever got there. So, does having a bunch of retired New Yorkers parked in the West Bank, does that add to Israel's security? Was that a critical thing that they needed to do? Or was it just pissing on people because they could, which is what it feels like to me. And so, yeah, I think a two-state solution is probably less likely than it's ever been. because the Israelis have approached it that way.
But I mean, in fairness, that every time it's been proposed through some peace summit, it's always the it's always the Palestinians that shoot it down. So, I mean,
Right.
it's and it's kind of to the your point. I think like actually, I just looked up the Palestinian political parties. There's like 10. I mean, there's like all these different sects, and they all have their different thing. And it's like, it's a problem of they don't have somebody that it's just so fragmented. It's like you
Right.
couldn't get them all to agree on anything.
Right. But I guess this is what I'm saying. So, yeah, they've got their own internecine political problems. And so the Palestinians can't get a voice that can say yes to anything, right? That's a huge problem. And the Israelis can do this. Oh, we're totally open to it. Just call us when you got it worked out. We're more than happy to do it. And meanwhile, I'm building retirement communities. I'm exporting my citizens to live in the West Bank in places where you would need you do enough of this and there's no two states to have because you've completely occupied the place that the Palestinians would have lived. And you sound good because you're saying the right thing. Oh, we're at the peace table and we're happy to do it. And meanwhile, the moving vans just keep going into the West Bank.
Nobody's resettling to Gaza,
Not so much.
which is I don't know if I think it was Trump or somebody was talking about like I mean you think about the real estate. It is awesome real estate right on the Mediterranean. It's like it could be nice. I mean, theoretically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Talk about an intractable problem. I don't know, but I'm a bit frustrated with what I perceive as the Palestinians have a hard time coming to yes on anything, and that's their own problem. But the smugness of a Israeli position that says, "Oh, sure, we're more than happy to talk. We're willing to consider it," and meanwhile, I'm every day making the problem harder to solve.
Well, how much of it do you think it like because some of the resettling is like that's their biblical land, right? I mean, there's a push of people to go to their area, but your thing is you think it's mainly pushed by the government.
100% it is. 100% it is. And sure, I can see Jewish people wanting to move back to Israel. Like you said, it's a beautiful place. It's a wonderful climate. You're on the Mediterranean Sea. Like it's a great place. But, the Jewish homeland thing, again, I was willing to say that state of Israel was created 80 some years ago, and the Palestinians need to think about how you're going to live in a world where that ship sailed 80 years ago. I would say if the ship sailed 2,000 years ago in the same way, you probably need to figure out how to manage in life rather than claiming an old property dispute
Yeah.
from back in the day.
Well, I mean, sounds extremely naive, but it's unfortunate they can't just live in the same place and be okay
Right.
with it, you know?
Right.
I mean, it's not like it's the first group of people from different ethnic backgrounds all living together someplace, but
Agree. But I think that's where when you got that religious overtone to it, it amplifies things a lot.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I think the politics of Israel and Palestinians in America is actually an interesting topic all its own, and some of the strange bedfellows that makes. I will say, I don't know how much this happens now, but back in the day when I took a trip to Israel, I was talking to people. The interesting thing is I don't want to assume our audience knows how this all plays out, but basically the modern state of Israel was a creation after World War II, in part recompense for what happened in the Holocaust and kind of acknowledging that. But talk about your point about wouldn't it be cool if people could just live together? In some ways, the creation of the state of Israel was like acknowledging that you had both from the Soviet angle, from the Nazis, this, oh, we're going to get rid of the Jews instead of just letting them live where they lived. Yeah, we create this state kind of out of whole cloth.
Because people couldn't live together in one place, like you said. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason. Like, no, instead of working towards mutual understanding and enforcing kind of respect for people with other back, no, we're going to create a place you know, in the Middle East that we'll just carve you out and let you, and we'll park you there. Uh, That's overly cynical to say that, but very little consideration given to the people that were already living in the land and had been for thousands of years, and that's the Palestinian beef. But the interesting thing is, you have this weird thing of American Zion, the American Zionist movement, that goes way back, and in fact there were a lot of prominent leaders who said they wanted to create a homeland for the Jewish people back in Palestine, in the Middle East. Well, then when the state got created, it sparked off a lot of interest from American evangelicals. And this is really even before evangelicals as we would know them today. It was really more of the fundamentalist Christians. It was like all of a sudden they see manifested in biblical prophecy the restoration of a state of Israel, and all kinds of hackles go off like, oh, well, this is what was foreseen, and we're right back on a prophetic calendar. And to this day, you have a lot of people that see the role of the modern state of Israel in that case. And Israel, of course, is really they've used that. They've for a long time they've really promoted kind of pilgrimage or religious tourism, and the largest market for that is fundamentalist Christians. And I don't know, but it's just interesting where you get this support. When I was there was people that were. I was at breakfast one day in a hotel, and it was with I was with a church group, and this lady was with a different church group, and she was telling me that they were with the Reverend so-and-so over there that was the leader of their tour, and that he had an inside deal that he was working with some of the Jewish leadership about getting the temple re-going again. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go have another bagel, and I'm going to slide to the side of the room because I don't want to be a part of when that goes down. So just interesting how that plays out.
As a Christian, it always, you'll hear people talk about Revelation, and I always get a little mistrustful whenever I hear somebody that says they have it all figured out, the whole end times figured out. It just seems like, it's certainly an interesting topic, but it certainly seems like there's a lot of potential scenarios. And I don't know, I just laugh. I was dating a girl one time in Tennessee and went to her church, and it was this a big Baptist church. And this preacher, he's like, all right, let me break it down. He whips out like slides. He's like, this is how it's all going to go in the end. Boom, 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 boom. You're like, yeah, there's probably more to it than that, but whatever you say, buddy.
Well, Jesus says pretty unambiguously in the Gospels that he doesn't know when he's coming back. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say if Jesus doesn't know when it's happened, the Reverend Billy Bob
right.
probably doesn't either.
So, Kent, this is a great, actually, my crazy neighbor yesterday is going to have a friend over this evening who lives in Israel. So, and I've been wanting some sling topics for tonight. And he's not Israeli. He's an American. He's actually a Texan living I forget what part. I think he lives north of Tel Aviv, but he runs an American school over there. So, but always good guy. Is a really you'd like this guy. He's the guy I was telling you about. They sail. They got a sailboat over Cyprus, but he's been like a U.S. government teacher his whole career. So he's moved around all these different countries. But so, I mean, that would be good sling for him tonight on the West Bank settlements. What other Israeli sling topics should I throw at him?
Oh, I don't know. That would be interesting. How does that play for him? What is his take on that?
Yeah,
definitely report back. Final topic. We had a good conversation last time, I think, about measures that we want to track.
Well,
one of our listeners messaged me and thought a good metric to add to our pile might be something about legislative effectiveness. In other words, the administration wants to get so many bills passed, and how does that go on? And I thought, dear God, the last thing I want is for Trump to be effective at administrative stuff, like gridlock, please. But yeah, I thought that was a good one. But it's interesting. So I'll throw this out there. We're not quite ready for prime time, but I've been through my work and kind of profession, kind of personally develop and professionally been working on AI and using AI to source things and was working on a little project on this, but it raised the question, as you said, you type an answer into Chat GPT and you have no idea where that's coming from. What I'm actually working on is an AI tool that you can specify the sources that it will use, and it will only use those sources to come back with the information that you want. And so part of my goal on that would be that we would have a library of agreed upon sources that we both are comfortable with, that then the AI tool could answer kind of questions like what was GDP in 1974.
That's
But it is
awesome.
interesting. It is interesting
I
how
mean, so you think it could just pull all the stats and you could just whip out, like, you could just download like spreadsheets of BLS data and
that's what I did in the demo that I showed
wow.
you. A couple of data points I use. I'll put a plug in there. Our producer might put a link on the website for this. The St. Louis Federal Reserve has an incredible repository of data that they assemble all kinds of government and other sources and then put it back for you. And so yeah, it's really handy to do. And so I just downloaded a couple of files. I downloaded mortgage rates, 30-year mortgage rates in the U.S. I downloaded GDP, and I put those into a model. And then I allow the AI, in this case, I allow the AI to use anything, but it has to tell you. So it tells you that it's from a trusted source, or it tells you it's from Wikipedia, which I gave it access to, or it tells you it's from some source that I can't verify that it went out and crawled it off the internet somewhere.
Well, we talked about what's a good source of truth. I think the best source of truth ought to be Kent and Kyle. After, like on cocktail number 2, because
Right.
then we will have all the answers. We can
Trust me.
trust me. Exactly. Exactly.
No, I do think it's an interesting question. How do you trust sources? I'm going to trust the Federal Reserve Board, and some of these things are,
Yeah.
there's multiple levels of trust, right? Like there's a number that was GDP in 1947,
Well, and
and
that's just it. It's like, you know, my trust that the Bureau of Labor Statistics has given me an accurate number. Yeah, high trust. My trust that some department does a press conference and tells me something, isn't probably at the same level. You know what I mean? It depends on what they're
exactly,
saying for sure.
yeah. Well, I think the difference between, even as simple as the difference between career government employees, I think you probably would say that that's a bad thing, but
Hmm.
I think that the bureaucracy
Depends
has
on
been a
the
good thing
depends
for
on
us.
the department, Kent.
Well, the point being though that a political appointee who blows in every 4 years and out
Yeah,
that's a different thing than someone who's made their career of this.
totally.
Yeah. And I think that again, GDP in 1947 is a little easier to figure out what that is. Is Trump a good president? That's going to be a lot harder to find something that's not biased. So
Yeah,
some of it's the questions that you're asking.
yeah, totally.
But I think we'd like to hear from our listeners. What are sources that you trust, and how do you combat that bias? I've said before, I read the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post kind of in parallel, and I figure I probably get the truth landing somewhere in the middle of those two. But you
You're
you
you're you're
have to
reading
be
you're reading two left wing publications.
the Wall Street Journal's editorial board, flaming communists.
That's right.
But in today's world, you have to be attentive to that. You have to be thoughtful about your sources.
Yeah, I've been reading this one, All Sides or something like that. It's kind of cool. It will take like one headline, like one subject matter, and then it'll spit out like three headlines on the same topic, one left, one right, one center. And it's really fascinating to read like the same subject, different publications, the way they, it's all essentially the same headline, but the way they say the headline are three different ways.
That might be an interesting use for the AI, is to
Yeah.
charge it with going out and finding a reputable but contrary view.
Well, at what point, and this may go into another episode, but at what point will AI be able to be the arbiter of what's, is that really the level when it gets to the sentience level, when it can actually navigate that? Because now it's only as good as what you feed it, right?
Right. Yeah. And it makes the possibilities are crazy. I've been digging in a lot in this, partly because I'm doing this for work, but also just because of my own interest and understanding a little behind the scenes of how this stuff works. It's both awe-inspiring and scary. You can find a 24-year-old on YouTube who's got a tutorial video who shows you how to create an AI bot that will crawl through every website on the planet and find contact information. And if they're in a particular sector, it will pick them out and it will add them to your contacts in Outlook.
Oh, wow. That is
Like
hilarious.
these, and again, it's like a 24-year-old who's in his basement doing the video.
Yeah.
Like the democratization, nothing that like I'm playing around with our stuff or that I'm doing at work, none of that would surprise you if it was Google doing it or Amazon.
Right.
But the fact that I can do it at my house in 2 hours on a Saturday morning, that's a different story.
Yeah.
And I think that democratization is going to, my prediction, quite apart from our politics thing, that you're going to hear the words agent or agentic AI. It's going to be a household term before the end of the year.
Agentic AI. And that is,
Distinct from ChatGPT is generative AI. You give it a prompt and it gives you back writing, information, pictures, right? You send it your resume and it sends you back a reformatted resume. It generates a better resume based on what you put in. It sends you a picture of a pirate with the Michigan State logo on a flag, right?
right.
Whatever you ask it. Don't ask me why I knew that one, but it generates something in response to your prompt. Agentic AI does something, makes decisions, fetches things, organizes things, acts on things, uses tools based on the prompts that you give it. It's an agent for you.
Mm.
And that's where the game changer comes. Like, I struggled for the longest. I'm like, I've not been, I get some colleagues they run everything that they send through ChatGPT before they send it. Every email gets run
Yeah.
through
Oh, yeah.
ChatGPT before they send it. I don't have the energy for that. And that seemed like kind of a diminishing returns thing to me. The idea of being able to use this AI natural language chat to make it go do things for me on the web,
That's huge.
it's a big deal. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to as we talked about this, the next layer in commerce, and that could be it. It could be like, hey, go find me a purse for my wife.
Oh,
Or,
yeah.
you know,
Oh, yeah. And you take a picture of her closet of what she has now and what she likes,
yeah,
and it processes the picture. Like the power of this, I don't know. I feel like in a way I'm late to the party because I've been hearing all these people, oh my gosh, AI is the future. And up to seriously about 3 months ago, I was like, okay, it's the future because I can make it draw me something or I can have it like proofread my resume. That does not sound like splitting the atom. This stuff, the agent stuff, kind of does. It has the real game changer characteristics to me.
well, we're in thought type jobs, Kent. So I guess if you're correct, by the end of the year, we ought to be able to just drink bourbon and rum all day, every day, and talk nonstop. So I can't wait.
If inflation doesn't raise the price of our liquor too high.
Well, there's that. Yes.
All right. Great conversation, Kyle. Thank you. And
Same,
and I
Kent.
got
Take
to
care.
say, I just want to, I think it's important to call it out when things go well. I appreciate you not reacting badly to my frustrations around things like tone, and I really did feel like heard and understood on that.
Good.
I think that matters. I think that's the essence of what dialogue is, right? Like rather than
Absolutely.
going to jump down my throat and say, "Oh, you're just a whiny liberal," and they should have sent those people out. Like we can have policy discussions. It's when we lay ad hominem stuff on top of it and nastiness, like
Totally agree.
like we lose the policy and we lose the civic discourse, and it's a double casualty. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Enjoyed it, Ken.
Hey, thanks for joining us on this episode of Bourbon and Rum Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us keep the good spirits flowing.
And we invite you to join this conversation. Follow us on our Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear.
And until next time, cheers.